The tale begins with a figure whose interior world stretches far beyond ordinary perception, shaped not by preference but by an inner sensitivity awakened long before memory could grasp its origin. Such a person carries an awareness that feels less like a skill and more like a state of being, as if an unseen current flows constantly between their heart and the emotional landscapes of everyone nearby. This heightened attunement forms an invisible link, a living thread through which the moods, hopes, anxieties, and contradictions of others travel unhindered. What many brush aside without noticing settles upon this individual with unmistakable weight. Within that sensitivity lies a luminous force that unsettles those who claim affection while secretly harboring resentment. They seldom recognize this contradiction within themselves. Their minds resist the admission that admiration can turn into irritation when confronted by someone who navigates inner truth with such immediacy. They sense something in that quiet radiance, a reminder of an inner barrenness they have never dared to explore. What arises inside them is not simple longing. It is a corrosive impulse that wishes not to share that glow but to diminish it. The person endowed with intuitive depth rarely understands why certain companions oscillate between warmth and withdrawal. They speak with sincerity, only to receive jokes puncturing their vulnerability. They express real feeling and meet interruptions that fracture their flow. Words that appear harmless carry tones meant to puncture their openness. These small stings accumulate, cutting far deeper than overt hostility because they come from those who profess devotion. Yet this dynamic has roots older than any single relationship. Many who perceive emotional undercurrents so clearly began their journey in early environments where survival required constant vigilance. In such households, affection fluctuated or was withheld entirely, forcing the child to detect subtle shifts in atmosphere to remain safe. They learned to sense tension before anyone acknowledged it, to anticipate reactions without guidance, to soothe others in order to avoid harm. What began as a strategy for endurance gradually transformed into a rare capacity for compassion. But the world does not always cherish that gift. When someone radiates honesty of feeling, those who have avoided their own psychological depths instinctively recoil. They cannot articulate why. They only know that proximity to such sincerity exposes the hollowness they conceal beneath well-crafted personas. Their discomfort grows quietly until it mutates into envy. That envy does not shout. It whispers, sabotages, disrupts. It cloaks itself in fondness while subtly eroding the confidence of the one it targets. The intuitive individual becomes a mirror that does not distort. In that mirror, the hidden fractures of others come into view. Some turn away in denial. Others attempt to crack the reflection to silence the truth it reveals. And so begins a painful dance where the one who senses everything becomes surrounded by people who feed on their warmth while resenting the very qualities that drew them close. The presence of someone who feels so vividly does more than illuminate the emotional atmosphere around them. It unsettles the structures others have built to avoid confronting their own inner emptiness. Those who rely on polished facades sense, often without understanding why, that this keen observer perceives more than any surface reveals. Such awareness becomes threatening. It seems to peel away the layers of disguise they have spent years constructing, exposing vulnerabilities they have never learned to face. And rather than welcoming this quiet truth, many instinctively defend themselves through subtle disparagement. This defense appears gradually. A faint shift in tone, a forced laugh at a moment requiring sincerity, an absent-minded remark intended to trivialize what carries deep meaning for the intuitive soul. Each gesture acts like a small stone thrown at a lantern, hoping to dull its shine. Though trivial in isolation, these blows accumulate, creating a growing fog that confuses the one who only wishes to understand and connect. Inwardly, the person touched by this sensitivity wrestles with confusion that few can comprehend. They notice the contradiction between affectionate words and diminishing behavior. They sense the growing resentment yet cannot locate its origin. They replay conversations searching for answers, unaware that the struggle they face is rooted not in anything they have done but in what they represent. Their ability to feel life with such clarity reveals truths the other has long hidden from themselves. This dynamic echoes an ancient pattern, one reflected across myths and histories where a figure of quiet insight becomes the target of those unwilling to confront their shadows. Stories portraying favored dreamers or innocent siblings harmed by covetous relatives linger across cultures because they mirror a universal tension between authenticity and denial. The intuitive individual does not intend to provoke anyone, yet their very existence disrupts the comfort of those who rely on avoidance. Inside relationships marked by this contrast, affection becomes an unstable force. The one who envies may offer declarations of care while simultaneously withdrawing compassion when it is most needed. They may oscillate between admiration and irritation, compelled toward the depth they observe yet unable to tolerate it. Their admiration transforms into resentment the moment they realize they cannot access the emotional richness they see in the other. The bond becomes a fragile vessel filled with contradictions. Dreams often reveal the truth long before consciousness accepts it. Many who navigate life with heightened perception describe symbolic visions of gatherings where every dish looks inviting but lacks nourishment, or tables set beautifully yet filled with dust. Such imagery reflects connections where promises shine brightly on the surface but contain nothing sustaining within. The psyche attempts to express what the waking mind refuses to recognize. Affection offered by one who secretly envies cannot feed the soul. And through this unspoken conflict, the intuitive person continues to search for understanding. They sense the tension yet strive to resolve it through kindness, empathy, and patience. But the more they offer, the more the envious companion feels exposed, and the cycle tightens like a cord pulled taut between two opposite forces. In time, the one who perceives emotional undercurrents begins to understand that these painful patterns are not personal failures but reflections of deeper psychological currents moving beneath the surface of human relationships. They discover that their capacity to feel so vividly is not a flaw to be corrected but a signal of inner strength, an invitation to honor their own depth rather than conform to the limitations of those who fear their own shadows. As this realization settles, the confusion that once clouded their heart gradually gives way to clarity. That clarity brings a new form of resilience. It teaches them to recognize when admiration carries a hidden edge, when closeness masks resentment, when affection is offered as a disguise for emotional hunger. They learn to step back without guilt, to preserve their energy without apology, and to protect their inner space from those who treat their sensitivity as a resource to exploit. In that act of protection, their empathy becomes grounded rather than scattered, intentional rather than reactive. From this place of groundedness, they begin to attract connections shaped not by envy but by mutual recognition. People capable of sincerity draw nearer, unthreatened by emotional intelligence and eager to grow beside someone who reflects truth instead of illusion. What once felt like a burden becomes a guiding light, pointing them toward relationships where vulnerability is a shared language rather than a source of discomfort. And perhaps the greatest revelation emerges in recognizing that envy was never a measure of their worth. It was simply the echo of unhealed depths in others. By releasing the need to fix or carry those wounds, the intuitive individual steps fully into their own being, whole, steady, and unafraid of the light they once tried to dim. If this message spoke to you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave your support, and share a personal reflection or experience connected to this theme. Your voice may help someone else recognize their own journey.